Vultures and beavers and hornets, oh my! We've stepped into the wacky wilderness of Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo from 1994. You play as newcomer Diddy Kong, along with the Grand Gorilla himself, Donkey Kong. Well, almost. See, there's a little lore to this game that the Donkey Kong that you're playing as is really Donkey Kong Jr. from nearly a decade ago. Meanwhile, Donkey Kong Sr. now goes by the name Cranky Kong. This revitalizing title introduced the long-forgotten character to a new generation of gamers in a spectacular fashion. And even more impressive is that it was not Nintendo who did it. They handed off development of the property to Rareware, a second-party developer that Nintendo had great trust in, and that trust was placed perfectly. King K. Rool and his Kremlin army have invaded Donkey Kong Island. Worse yet, they've stolen Donkey Kong's massive stash of bananas. You start off playing as the titular character, and soon find new friend Diddy Kong banging away from inside a barrel. They make their way through the island to chase away the baddies using a combination of their strengths. Donkey Kong is beefier, so he can defeat bigger enemies that Diddy can't. He can also pound the ground to reveal secret items. Meanwhile, Diddy is faster and able to maneuver around the platforms more freely than Donkey. The way Diddy holds a barrel too is quite useful for finding wall secrets. Both of them can defeat enemies by jumping on them or using a forward attack roll that can hit multiple enemies if timed right. This attack roll can also be used to get more distance out of their jumps, acting like a pseudo double jump of sorts. All these tactics do come into play for some platforming and secrets, but they aren't required to at least finish the game. Donkey and Diddy aren't alone in their struggle though, as the game introduces a couple other characters to help the duo. There's the aforementioned Cranky Kong, who will use his years of knowledge to relay tips and tricks for the upcoming levels. Funky Kong is a surfer turned pilot and travel agent. His airplane barrel will allow Donkey and Diddy to travel back and forth between sections of the island. And there's Candy Kong, Donkey Kong's supposed girlfriend. She provides you the opportunity to save your game progress. Meanwhile, in some levels, you can get some help from animal buddies that can lend their talents to your cause. Rambi the rhinoceros plows through enemies and can easily find wall secrets. On Guard the swordfish helps you swim better and actually attack underwater. Winky the frog lets you jump higher and can defeat otherwise undefeatable enemies. Espresso the ostrich runs fast and can let you float over a distance. There's one more buddy I didn't get to this time around named Squawks the parrot, but all he really does is hold a light up for you to be able to see in super dark levels. Not to worry though, he does get a bigger role in the next game. Donkey Kong Country is such a smooth-feeling game with tight and responsive controls, and the levels are all laid out in fun and unique ways. For the most part, the platforming can be tackled at any pace you want. You can go slow and steady, or quick and dexterous. Every level has a ton of secrets with rewards ranging from extra bananas to a plethora of extra lives. The early stages really aid you in finding them, more like a tutorial on finding secrets that later require more of a keen eye and some thinking to find. Knowing when to take your time and when to just plow ahead can really help you in this game. Patience and persistence will be needed for a few of these more frustrating levels, especially the minecart levels that require tight timing and reflexes. You'll want to load up on lives before hitting those levels. The ability to only save the game at certain locations might not sit too well with today's audience, and while a part of me sympathizes with that, the other part of me wants to go Cranky Kong on them and say,
"Back in my day, we didn't get to save after every level and we liked it."
The gameplay gets a 9 out of 10. When Donkey Kong Country came out, it looked like nothing we'd ever seen before. Yes, we've seen the likes of Mortal Kombat use pseudo 3D techniques before, using live motion capture to place low-res images onto the models in background. But here in Donkey Kong Country, everything you see was made from scratch with 100% intent of its usage. And in doing so, they were able to craft charming characters and lush backgrounds. In doing so, there was a major sense of cohesion and you were glued to the screen wanting to see more as you progressed through the game. The character models are great and painstakingly crafted. They animate with charm, and you'll rarely find a situation where they blend into the background badly. The design is not what I would call beautiful, but it is oozing with character. Every enemy design has a little yikes factor to them, and palette swaps were not used to make a different enemy, just different attack patterns or better cohesion with the environment. If there was a new enemy, there was an entirely new design, so there's no mistaking them. Speaking of reuse though, I find it funny that Funky Kong is basically Donkey Kong with some accessories, but it works. and those environments, they're just chef's kiss worthy. It helps that they didn't have to animate the background like characters, so a well-rendered image works wonders. Add to that how they use the layers to create a sense of depth and parallax. You feel like you're in a vast jungle or a massive cave system, amongst many other environments. I'll say one thing that does slightly go against this game visually though, absolutely take gaming health seriously when you play this, because there are a few levels that do whole screen flashes and color changes that can quickly cause pain to your eyes. Some have been known to cause epileptic seizures, and the game manual absolutely made sure you knew that. Keep those lights on and take your breaks, people. The graphics of Donkey Kong Country gets a 9 out of 10. The soundtrack of this game is ASMR before ASMR was a thing. The atmosphere the music portrays is generally of a soothing nature, even though they still vary in intensities for different situations. The DK Island swing sets the tone with an upbeat melody to start that goes into a melancholy tone in the latter half. Cave Dweller Concert is just a few notes played on a marimba with drip sound effects to accompany it, but the simplicity really sets the atmosphere of a secluded cave. Aquatic ambience feels light and heavy, like floating in water. And thank goodness Minecart Madness is a fun track to listen to, as you're going to be playing those levels over and over for a while. I could go on, I really could, but take my word for it, the soundtrack of this game is top notch. As for the sound effects, they all sound great and satisfying too. I honestly cannot think of a single one that I disliked. I especially liked the little high-pitched yips the Kremlins make when you defeat them, wiping that constant smug look off their faces. The music and sound of Donkey Kong Country gets a 10 out of 10. We're gonna take a deep dive down memory lane on this one, so buckle up. Like a lot of kids on Christmas Day of 1994, I was elated seeing this game box when I peeled away the wrapping paper, and spent a good chunk of the day plopped in front of the TV diving into it. This was also one of the few games I actually played alongside my younger sister, which unfortunately had to end somewhat early because, like I mentioned before, the flashing lights triggered an epileptic seizure scare in her. We were sitting too close to the screen, so, you know, don't do that. Not to worry though, she turned out perfectly fine afterwards. On a happier note though, another memory I have of this game was when we were being babysat by an older cousin who was playing around with us. He was play chasing my sister, and when I played the intro theme to the game in the music player, he would stop and just dance to it. As soon as I stopped playing it, he started chasing her again, and we would just loop this a few times. Specific memories aside, this was another Rare game that I actually took the time to 100%. I played it a lot, and it's a core game of my childhood. The nostalgia hit of Donkey Kong Country is a 9 out of 10. Rareware was a pretty solid developer before Nintendo entrusted one of their core franchises to them, but the work that they did on this game catapulted them to elite status, and we can easily see why. The visual cohesion mixed with the audible atmosphere made for a totally encompassing vibe that hooked players to enjoy the solid gameplay. When you fire this up, whether for the first time or for the 100th time, please remember to practice safe gaming habits and take the time to really sink into the atmosphere. It's gonna make your brain tingle.